Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to this week's episode of How Can It Be with Allie Johnson and...
Wendy Free.
Oh, man. I'll just never get sick of that. It's
cute,
truly
huh?
the best thing ever that rhymes.
Yeah, I think it's kind of
It's
cute.
meant to be. Oh, I'm loving
How
it.
can it be?
How can it be it's meant to be? Oh, I'm
How?
loving it. Yeah, maybe say it one more time. That's really good. Oh, man, you guys. Okay, we always start out all of our episodes fairly similar, except for when we just repeat the same thing over and over again. That's perfect. But this is our little podcast all about glorifying God in the everyday good and the bad and the in-between. So we always start out all of our episodes talking about little ways that we saw God in our life this week. So Wendy's going to start it out.
I'm going to start it out.
Give it to us.
Well, I think I saw Jesus this week through sunsets.
Oh, best.
Utah, during the wintertime, has the best sunsets I've ever seen. Oh my gosh, you walk outside and it's just like painting across the sky. Yeah. Pink clouds, orange, purple, amazing. And you just, I don't know, I just feel like Jesus really loves me when I see that, because you just feel like overwhelming warmth and love. And I feel like it's just like, okay, yeah, if you had a bad day, here's a sunset, now your day is better.
Yeah.
You know?
You want to know what I always would tell my friends in seminary? That our sunrises and the sunsets. You want to know what I would always tell my friends in high school? Anyways.
Yeah, what did you say in high school?
Yeah, that's no problem. But I would always say that sunsets and sunrises were like my little personalized like love letter from God. Oh. And it's like, think about like when you're a little kid and you're going to lunch and you pull out your lunchbox and like, I don't know how it was for you, but like my parents never wrote notes in it, but sometimes my mom would sneak a note in like 1 to 2 times a year, you know, like because she wanted us to make our own lunches to become independent, right. Whatever. But sometimes like once in a blue moon, she would make it and she would put a little note in and be like, hope you're having a great day. I love you, you know? And I'd be like, hey guys, like, check this out, you know?
You frame it.
But literally, I always have felt like that is God's like personalized little lunchbox note to me. Like, yeah. And it's like every day you're going to get one, you know? Except for in the wintertime, you will miss it 90% of the time because it's literally setting at 4 p.m.
Yeah, you're still in the office at 4 p.m.
It's not feeling good. So it's not really feeling that good.
That's when you just close up your stuff and you say, I got to go see the sunset God sent to me today.
Yeah.
And then you feel better and then you just...
Yeah. And it's good. Okay. And that's a great way to see God in your life.
I know.
Oh, I love it.
It makes your day so much better.
Oh, it's so good.
Okay, Allie, tell us how you saw Jesus this week.
Okay, my little moment was so all my family was up in Utah visiting for Thanksgiving last week. And I took all of my little cousins and my 2 younger siblings to my house. Okay. On a little outing, you know. They always like to see like where I'm staying. They like to see
it's like a field
all
trip.
The things. Yeah. Yep. So we went and we were just like switching over a load of laundry at my house, and that's literally it. Anyways, we get back in the car and driving back to my aunt's house where we were all staying. And my phone would not connect to the Bluetooth, so we were not going to be listening to the radio, and so it was silent in the car. And I'm like,
okay.
And so I say to like all my teenage cousins and my 15-year-old younger siblings, I'm like, okay, guys, who wants to go first and say like how they saw Jesus in their life today? Okay. Oh. We talked for 20 minutes in the whole drive home about little ways that they all saw Jesus in their life that day. Oh, that was the best moment of my entire week. Like, and it was so like, okay, the phone was not supposed to connect. Like, I was supposed, like, we were supposed to talk about him, you know?
Oh my gosh.
And it's so cool that, like, in the moments of talking about how he was in your life, like, you feel more of his presence in your life, you know?
Yeah.
Talking about him
Yeah.
invites him in.
Right.
Welcomes
100%.
him right into the conversation.
Yeah.
And it's so good.
Yeah.
It's so
well,
good.
And there's something about hearing a testimony or how a little child sees Christ, because the scriptures are full of be like little children, right? Because they just see it in the most simple, perfect way that you sometimes would have never even thought of.
Yeah.
So the fact that like you're hearing from, I mean, they're probably like 11, 12, 15, teenagers maybe. But like just hearing their perspective on Christ, sometimes we overthink the process.
Oh my gosh.
And we make it way more complicated than it should be. But a little child literally sometimes is just like, oh yeah, Jesus is my friend. And you're like, boom, yep, that's exactly what I was trying to say.
It's literally the best. And there's this little TikTok video that I go back and watch whenever I'm sad.
Good.
I don't watch it that often lately because I'm just a little happy.
Oh, good.
Oh,
good.
I should get sad soon, so I can watch it again. Yeah. Anyways, it's a video of this little boy like learning how to pray.
Okay.
And he's like talking to his dad about like, okay, what do I say? Like, how's like God gonna know that I love him? Like, and he's saying that, and he's like so concerned, and him and his dad are talking about it and whatever. Yeah. So he like mumbles out this little prayer, you know, and all that he says is, God, like, thank you, and like I love you, and I believe in you, and I want to live for you. And then he says, Amen. Amen. It was super fast. And then he looks at his dad and says, yes, now he knows. Like, now he knows that I love him. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the best thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But truly, like, how many times is God looking down on us and being like, oh, now they know. Like, now they know just how much I love them today. Like, they needed that, you know?
From the little tender mercies he sends
us. I love it.
Well, and why is it, as adults, sometimes so hard for us to admit stuff like that to God?
Literally.
Like, it's so hard sometimes. Like, it was so easy for that kid to go down and be like, hey, I love you. I need you today. Like, thanks for being there. Yeah. Amen. You're my best friend.
Literally.
But sometimes it's literally like sometimes pulling teeth for us to get on our knees and be like, hey, God, just kidding. I can't do this by myself. I kind of do need you today. And I need you to be my best friend as well. Yeah.
It's because we're all prideful. We literally can't get away from like needing to be the best.
Right.
And I for sure, that is my problem all the time. Like I will stay saying, oh, like, yeah, that's fine. I'm going to be fine doing this by myself.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay. Then I end up going back. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry about that. We both knew that was not the right choice. Yeah. But I'm ready to walk with you again, God, you know?
Yeah.
And then it's like when you build the habit of like needing him in your life, like, then it's so good. When you're in a good groove with Jesus, you're unstoppable.
Well, that's when you spend a day without him and it's night and day difference.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my gosh, today sucked. Oh yeah, Christ wasn't there today because I didn't ask him to be.
Yeah.
So then you bring him back. But you do have to get in that groove.
Yeah.
To notice him and notice that he's there.
For sure.
Which is,
And you have to believe in him. Like you have to like open up the stage for him to show you that he's there.
Right.
Oh, it's just the best. And you have to sometimes like have faith that he's gonna show up, you know? Or have faith that, like, maybe he's there in ways that you don't know.
Yeah.
But have faith that, like, he's going to show you.
Yeah. Right. Well, and I feel like there's so many times where we will pray and we will expect God to be there and listen. But how many times do a lot of our prayers go unanswered? And in turn, a lot of us say, oh, the heavens are silent right now during this time of my life.
Yeah.
Oh, the heavens are closed. Like I am not receiving any help, any guidance from heaven, but we continue to pray. And that right there is the faith and the knowledge that we do know that the heavens are not open. We do know because of God's track record that he is listening.
Yeah.
That he is sitting there. He is answering our prayers. and we have faith that he's going to answer them in his time.
Yeah.
Because we are, like you said, selfish, prideful, and we do want the answer right now. But in the end, like in the back of our minds, we're like, I know God is doing it in his timing. I'm going to have faith. I know he's going to show up because I've seen it in the Bible. I've seen it way too many times where God has showed up. I know he's pretty dang good at keeping his promises. So he will answer my prayer.
Yeah.
But it is sometimes where we have that fear and we're like, oh my gosh, the heavens have been closed for months. Like, where is God?
Literally.
And you just have to keep that faith.
Yeah. And don't you think that sometimes, like, things that we do in our own life make it seem like the heavens are closed to us? You know, like, sometimes our own perspective blinds us from seeing how heaven is in our life. And I think, too, like, I saw this and I read this to you on our drive here, but it's awesome. You guys need to hear it, okay? It made me giggle, and then immediately after I was like, okay, wait. Like, this is so true.
Yeah.
And like called me to repentance immediately too. But like, think about like how many times like you'll go to a fast food restaurant, you know, and you go through the drive-through, you know, and they hand you your food and they did something wrong with the order, you know? And that never feels awesome. Like, for me, if I'm going to whatever place I'm going to, like, sometimes if the sauce is not included, like, the meal is wrecked for me. Like, I need the sauce or it's not going to be the complete experience.
Right.
But how many times do I turn right back around and go again the next week, you know? It's not going to stop me from going back and going to Cane's, you know?
Right.
Just if they forgot my ketchup on the side, you know? And how many times are we in our life, like, letting one little mistake that we make or one little trial that we go through be what stops us from turning and going back to God, you know? And that's where we have to have the faith in him.
Yeah.
Like, you have to have the faith that, like, oh, next time they're going to get my order right.
Right.
Oh, and maybe it's not like, it's not having faith that, like, next time God's going to do what you want.
Yeah.
It's having faith that next time you're going to trust him enough to stick through it with him.
Right.
And that's why you have to keep going back to him. Like, you cannot be more loyal to McDonald's than you are to your maker. And that I said, so I'm literally reading this. I said, okay, this is hitting me right where it hurts. Because how many times? How many times am I going to turn back to the world?
Right.
And be like, okay, like, but I trust you still.
Right.
And it's not that hard.
Yeah.
We just have to remember who holds it all in his hands.
Yeah. Well, and we literally do it because of fear. Like, we're afraid that if it's out of our control, we don't know how it's going to go. We don't know how it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I feel like sometimes I'm a control freak. And I'm like, if it's not in my control, I don't know what the end result is. So I'd rather just do it myself because I know how it's going to turn out.
Yeah.
Which is where the hardest part comes in of being like, okay, God, I'm giving all my control. I'm literally letting go and I'm letting you take control and you take over my life right now. And I was actually talking to my dad about something like the heavens are closed and this whole topic a few weeks ago. And it was kind of this realization of, I go to my dad for all advice in life. I ask him about school and work and everything and just want him to like talk me through it and give me advice and tell me what to do. And I feel like sometimes we do that to God. And we're like, hey, God, like, here's work. What should I do for work? What should I do for school? Should I date this boy? Should I move here? There's so many things we ask God. And when we don't receive an answer, it's kind of like our parents when we go to them for help and they don't tell us exactly what to do because they trust us. And they're like, no, I raised you the right way. I know exactly who you are as a person. You are capable of making this decision on your own and you will be okay. So trust yourself on that because I trust you. And we need to do that same thing with God. Of like understanding that when he isn't answering our prayers and sometimes he is silent, it's because he trusts us and he will be there with whatever decision we make. And we just need to trust him on that and trust that if we choose and we take a certain path, that God will be there and he will show up. And if it's not the right path, just know that he's going to be there and he's going to redirect your path. But sometimes you just have to be like, okay, God, let's go. Like, I know you're going to show up because in the past, you've showed up every single time. Like, you want to say that God's not going to show up, but if you look behind you at your past, God has been there every single time. And if you don't see him, you got to look harder because I know he is there in every single detail. Mm-hmm. So you just kind of have to trust that he's going to show up and be there every single time.
Yeah. And I think, too, it's like I've got to the point where I see him so much in my life that I almost want to say, like, to people sometimes when they can't recognize him, you know, I want to be like, you must be trying hard not to see all the ways that he's in your life, you know? And then immediately I'm like, oh, that was you. Like, you've been that person before.
Right.
And it's so easy in the world to be like, oh, I can't find it. Sorry. I can't see the light. Like, I think about me as a child, like the amount of times I would go to my mom and say, hey, have you seen this whatever of mine?
Yeah.
And she would look at me and say, have you looked yet? And I would be like, well, no, but like I just know that you probably know where it is, and so I'm going to save myself a ton of time if I just ask you where it is first. And she's like in the middle of like cooking this full course meal, whatever, and I'm like, but do you know where like my right earring went? You know, like, and she's like, you look first, like go look and then circle back if you can't find it and I'll help you find it. Right. The amount of times that all it took was me getting up and going and looking and I would find it immediately. And she would ask me about it later and be like, hey, like, whatever happened with that earring?
Right.
And I'd be like, oh, by the way, I found that immediately when I went and looked for it.
Yeah.
You know? And then she would immediately be like, isn't that crazy what you can do?
Yeah.
When you just try and look for it yourself?
Yeah. Well, and you know that if you didn't find your earring, she would have shown up and she would have helped you find it in return.
100%.
Like, she followed up. She knew you were going to find it. But even if you didn't, she was going to show up. And that's exactly how God is. If you aren't capable of doing something, God will show up. If you can't do something, period, if you're like, no, I went and I looked everywhere, God's going to be like, okay, let's do it together.
Yeah.
And that's where you have to have that faith. And I feel like hope also comes right in line with faith. Because if you don't have hope, what's that quote? It's kind of like faith. It's like without hope and faith, like it doesn't.
Faith without works is dead.
Yeah, faith in action.
Yeah.
Like that is one.
But also faith and hope. Like the hope is the follow through of the faith.
Right. The hope is knowing and like hoping that it's gonna happen.
True.
You know?
Yeah.
It's just you kind of have to like look inside yourself and be like, okay, God, you have to know his character in a sense as well.
Yeah.
Because when you know God's character and you know his track record and you know how he is in the scriptures, you know how he will show up in your life in every single one of those seasons. But if you don't, like if I didn't know God right now, I probably would have a hard time believing that he would be there through all the seasons of my life. I kind of be like, sir, I kind of haven't seen you in my life. Like, I don't really trust you. Like, I don't think you're going to show up.
Totally.
But when you do learn about him, you do know his character. You do know his mercy and his grace and his kindness and his love. You know he will be there no matter what.
Yeah. And getting to know him means that you know that he's not the type of guy to leave you out in the dust.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
He actually wants to be with you every second.
Right.
And the crazy thing, too, is it's like he is with you every second. It's up to you if you see him or not.
Right.
And that's what's nuts, is it's like, okay, wait, like recognizing that you've had this awesome tool, this great enhancement to your life right next to your whole journey through life.
Yeah.
And recognizing the absence of that hurts so bad sometimes.
Yeah.
When you realize how easy it could have been if you just looked to him.
Right.
And how looking to him makes all the difference.
Right. But it's definitely easier said than done.
Totally.
You have to put in the work.
It's a practice.
Yeah.
It is a tried and true effort every day to prioritize him, you know?
Yeah.
I think too there's been stages of my life where I am trying to have a relationship with him for the wrong reasons. Like there was a whole season of my life a year ago where I know for a fact the only reason why I was trying to be close with God was so that I could find a lover. And that is actually real. Like, how many times, like, when you're talking to somebody about like dating or dating advice, like, they'll say the whole thing of like, oh, well, like, if you really want to find a man, like, just like run to God and like look next to you while you're running, and whoever's running next to you, like, that's who you marry.
Yeah.
And so there was a whole phase of my life last year where my whole relationship with God was contingent upon like my dating experiences.
Yeah.
And I was mad at him all the time because I was giving God an ultimatum. Yeah. And hey, he doesn't work that way actually. Like he says, believe in me and I'll give you rest. Like I will show you the way.
Right.
And I was saying, hey, like, I'm going to, like, get to know you a little so that I can get this in return.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how silly of me. Like, because then anytime that, like, I would be in a dating relationship or something along those lines, I'd be like, oh, this is God blessing me for trying to get to know him. And that's not what it's about, you know? You have to get to know him for the right reason.
Right.
Like, if you go into it for any reason other than you knowing that as a person and as a human and as his child, you need him, then it's not going to be the relationship that you need.
Right.
It's not going to be the blessings that you need and that your soul craves from him.
Right.
If you go into it with the wrong intentions.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and just imagine, like, if last year God were to give you that perfect man that you were hoping for, where would your relationship with God stand after he came into your life?
Mm-hmm.
Would you now cling to this man and forget God because you're like, oh, okay, like I got what I needed you for. Now I'm done with you. I'm going to go pursue this now.
Exactly.
No, if you focus on God and that is your top priority, no strings attached, you just want him in your life, then that's when you keep him. And that's when he will be there and constantly your best friend through all those stages of life. Because there have been so many relationships where I have been like, oh, I'm in a relationship right now. I don't really have time for any other kind of relationship in my life. And God hasn't been present. And I have felt defeated and hopeless and just a lot of things, even though I was in this relationship. But when you put God first and you know that like your relationship with him is immovable, then like your life is just better off. Just like trust us on that. Like your life is so good when you put God first.
Oh my gosh. And the amount of like quotes you'll see on Pinterest and like people that say this, that guess what? It actually backs it up. Like enough people have said it where it's like, oh, maybe I should believe that this is true, you know? Yeah. If nothing else, it's like how many other people are going to have to tell me before I turn to God that if he is enough for me, like I'll be set. Like it won't matter what my dating relationships look like. It won't matter what my finances are. Like I still have some stress in my life for sure. Like life is all about learning and lessons. But when you know him and you feel of his love, you don't need anything else. And I think like that is where your heart changes. And you start wanting different things.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so good.
Well, and we were, you're going to have to help me with this, but we were talking to a friend a few weeks ago, and she was telling us about how life, sometimes a lot of people think it's just this one road, and it's just like these ups and downs. But really, life is like a spider web. Yeah. You remember who's saying this?
Yes, it was Kayla.
Yeah.
Oh, we have the best friends, first of all. Yes. But yeah, our friend Kayla was telling us all about how it really is like, oh man, it was the best thing ever. So she essentially says like, the cool thing about it is like, And the visual of a spider web is so awesome to
Yeah,
think about
because there's
with his
so
plan.
many different
But we
directions
think
and
so
ways to
much that
go.
it's like, okay, it's a straight way and it's like,
Yeah,
if you veer off, then you have to find your way back.
yeah,
But that's not who God is, right?
right,
Like, he is a spiderweb God. Like,
right.
he will see where you're at
Yeah,
and he'll see that this is where you need to end up on the other side of this web.
yeah,
And he'll say, okay, she's like, maybe she can go here, or maybe she could go here.
yeah.
Or maybe we could like zig here and zig back here and then come
Yep,
over here and come over here and then
yep,
circle all around. We can Charlotte's
yeah,
Web it over here, like,
yep,
and then we can end up here,
yeah,
And he makes it beautiful.
yeah.
He makes it unique to you because he loves
Right,
you uniquely.
right. Well, and how many of us are like, oh, yep, the day I'm born, this is how my life is set out to be. I'm gonna graduate from college. I'm gonna marry a super hot, rich husband. I'm gonna have 5 kids. I'm gonna have a nice house. Like, you just set your life and you're like, this is how God is gonna make it turn out to be. But the quicker you grow up, the quicker you realize that it is not at all like that.
And it is not up to you.
It is a spider web.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with going all of these different directions and going in these zigzags and everything in your life, because God is fully aware. He knows exactly where you are at in your life right now. He put you on the earth at this time for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows where you will be at the end, but he's not telling you that plan in between. Because sometimes if he tells you the plan, you're going to step back and be like, whoa, actually, I'm not doing this. I don't care about that end result.
Yeah.
But like in the end, it is exactly who you want to be. And God has your best intentions in mind. Like, his whole goal is for us to be happy. So if you just let him and let go and you're like, okay, yeah, let's go through this spider web. I'm ready. Then in the end, you're going to be 10 times happier than if it's like this life that you imagined. And you're like, oh yeah, this is exactly how I think it's going to be. No, you just have to be like, okay, God, let's go through this spider web. Like, I don't know what my life even looks like, but sure, it's in your hands. I'm ready.
And that's where I think, like, I don't know, I feel like I'm learning so much about God and also simultaneously about the devil.
Yeah.
Because in the same way that, like, turning to God, like, brings empowerment to your life and brings this armor and this, like, confidence and joy into your life, the devil will deceive you, and he will plant that fear in your heart. Like, think faith, not fear. Like, let faith drive you and let your connection to God excite you. But yeah, I feel like in knowing, like, God and walking with him, you get this, like, sense of excitement for him and his plan. Like, the way that as, like, I've grown, that's true. The way that as I've grown closer to God, I just, like, I enter into every day with this mindset of, like, okay, God, like, I can't wait to see what you have in store for me. Like, I have a little prayer journal, and in the mornings I write down my prayers. And at the end of, I was reading through them on Sunday, and at the end of most of my prayers, I am writing, like, scribble, 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 whatever, like, and the end almost always says the same line. And I always end my prayers and say, okay, like, I can't wait to see what you have for me today. Like, let's do it.
Yeah.
And it's like exclamation point, exclamation point. I'm like, let's go. Like, can't wait.
Let's
like,
win the day.
Absolutely, because you do win the day when you do it with him. Like, things are exciting and life has this, like, glimmer of hope and joy when you see it in his eyes. Like, he is not going to scare you.
Right.
He will empower you and he will tell you, you can do this. Like, life is still going to be hard, but there is joy in him and there's fulfillment in him. And there's this excitement of, like, okay, like, what's in store today? Like, instead of this fear of, like, I don't know if I can do another day. Like, what about this? I'm scared about this. I'm scared about this. Like, God doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
God will not scare you, ever.
No.
And I think that's a really good way to get to know the spirit of the devil.
Yeah.
is to be able to recognize, okay, like, I'm feeling irrationally scared about this. Like, these thoughts are not coming from God.
Yeah.
Because I know that he would only encourage me here.
Yeah.
And so I need to turn to him. And turning it to him in those moments, like, really, really changes everything. It takes such a load off also.
Oh,
so amazing.
So much.
So awesome.
Yeah. There's so many things that now you don't have to worry about because God's worrying about it. Like, why not give it to God?
Oh, give it to God.
Take that stress off. Like, give it all to him. Because it always turns out better than you could have imagined. It always turns out in a way that, like, you couldn't have even dreamt of.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many times in my life where I wished it was one way, but the way that God came up with is something that I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I couldn't have even thought of that, and it's 10 times better than I wanted.
Yeah.
So just trust him. Just put it in his hands, and you will not regret it. Yeah. You won't regret it. You won't. Like, your life will turn upside down. It will be amazing. You will have to, like, pinch yourself every day and be like, is this my life? Like, is this real?
Seriously. And your life is going to be the same as it was before. Yeah. Chances are. Like, there probably won't be these crazy changes that happen to you after you get to know God. But the whole way that you view the mundane, normal life, like, you'll have this stoke for life.
Yeah.
And this excitement of, like, oh my gosh, like, these simple things are made amazing because of him. And I think too, like, there's so much heartbreak and sadness that happened to us in this life. There's so much loss and tragedy, and there is so much unknown. But I think we forget sometimes that, like, if God, like, if we want to say that God took away something we could never imagine losing, like, what happens when we shift that mindset and instead we say, okay, like, I can't imagine what God can give me.
Yeah.
If I couldn't imagine losing what I've lost in this life, I can't imagine what he could give.
Yeah.
And just let him show you, like, all the ways that he is working for your good.
Yeah. Because he'll always pull through. He'll be there, and he will show you. You just have to wait on him and trust him.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, after you get into that phase and you understand who God is, and then that's when it becomes that you want to talk about God every single day and share him. And when Christ becomes an everyday topic, you know?
And that's the best thing.
It's when you notice him everywhere. And your heart is just always so full and happy.
Yeah. And you almost find yourself thinking maybe, like, how can it be?
How can it be?
And how can it be?
I mean, maybe we'll discuss it next week again of how can it be that we deserve Jesus? Right, Allie?
Yeah, and we can't wait to see you next week, you guys.
Oh, I can't wait to see you next week.
Okay. Love you. Bye.